An hour passed since the trial started, and now all the wanderers were either laying on the ground, writhing in pain, or barely standing, supported by their weapons. The only exceptions were Erica, Shanu, and Diana, whom 13 had avoided or dealt lightly. Among these three, Erica's face was beat red out of anger and embarrassment because every time she clashed with Zion, the bastard would slap her bum as if he was disciplining a bad kid. Because of this, Erica remained high in the sky and simply bombarded the Shu*T out of him. Unfortunately, none of her attacks landed on her target, even though she used homing magic bullets. Zion dispersed each and every single one of them using his fire bullets. Shanu and Diana could only stare at the other wanderers awkwardly because they were the only ones that were unscathed from the battle. Siri and Stella were currently half kneeling on the ground, their gaze locked on the teenage boy standing at the center of the arena, with his golden staff resting on his shoulder. Roland and Joshua were beaten black and blue, but the one who had it worst was none other than Derek. 13 had been especially hard on him, as if making sure that the swordsman got hit more than the rest of the hero party combined. But despite all that, Derek was still burning with fighting spirit as he tried to prop himself even though his entire body was in pain. Just a minute ago, they saw a countdown timer appear above 13's head, which made all of their faces turn solemn. It was a 30-minute countdown, and none of them knew whether they only had 30 minutes to defeat Zion or if they just needed to survive for 30 more minutes. The first option seemed impossible, while the second option made them feel as if they were being looked down upon. However, the majority of the wanderers wished that the countdown timer only represented the time where they needed to survive their battle against Zion Leventis before they successfully clear their mission. They could still remember how Sherry cleared the challenge just by hugging Zion. Because of this, they thought that if they managed to hug him, they would be able to complete this mission as well. The guys, who were led by Derek, attacked 13 with open arms, which ended badly for them. For some reason, a look of disgust appeared on Zion's expressionless face when all the guys charged at him with arms spread wide. They were all given a severe beating, and the teenage boy made sure to give their bums a good smacking, almost making the wanderers unable to stand up afterwards. Looking at the ticking clock above the teenage boy's head, Shauna took a deep breath and embedded her banner firmly on the ground. She then walked towards Zion unarmed and attempted to hug him just like what Sherry did. Earlier, she didn't have the courage to do what the younger girl did because she wasn't too confident that Zion would not harm her. But as the battle progressed, there had been many opportunities for Zion to deal her a serious blow. However, he never made a move. This emboldened her to take a chance, believing on her gut feeling that he wouldn't hurt her. 10 meters, 8 meters, 5, 3, 1. Shauna stood only a meter away from Zion as she reached out to give him a hug. Just like what happened to Sherry, he didn't offer any resistance and allowed Shanu to hug him. But that was it. Shauna didn't get teleported outside of the arena and declared that she had passed the trial like Sherry did. The saintess of the hero party could feel her cheeks burning because she could sense that everyone's gaze was locked on her body. It made her feel awkward because nothing was happening. Suddenly, someone hugged 13 from behind, and it was none other than Erica. With two beautiful ladies hugging him from the back and the front, the wanderers felt something rise up in their chest. That place between the sorceress and the saintess looked like heaven. My chest hurts. Why am I crying? Damn it, I didn't choose the single life. The single life chose me. Bro, I know what you feel. Damn, it hurts. Roland and Joshua suddenly felt as if they regained strength in their bodies when they saw Zion rest his head on Shauna's chest as if using them as pillows. The other wanderers felt something similar, so they all roared and charged at their enemy with bloodshot eyes. Oh boy, you guys! Erica, who sensed that something was wrong, felt goosebumps as hundreds of single guys roared with their weapons raised high. Shauna, who also felt that now was a good time to pull back, suddenly found herself being hugged by 13, making her unable to break free. If this was any other occasion, she might have stayed in this position because she didn't mind being hugged by Zion. In fact, she felt as if she was holding someone very important to her, someone she must protect, which confused her greatly. When the wanderers were only dozens of meters away from him, 13 summoned countless fire bullets around Shauna's and Erica's body, which flew toward the charging wanderers who were out for his blood. During this whole process, Shauna didn't know if she should continue hugging Zion, so she asked for Erica's opinion. Should we let go? Shauna asked. You let go, Erica replied. I'll hold him. Are you infected by the Zion virus? Who? What Zion virus? What are you talking about? Erica, who had no idea what Shauna was referring to, held the teenage boy firmly because she believed that they must defeat Zion within the time limit. She was now an elite, so she believed that she was now stronger than the teenage boy in her embrace. Her plan was to bind 13's movements and find a way to neutralize him. However, when she was about to enact her plan, she felt conflicted because the teenage boy wasn't offering any resistance and was simply burying his head on Shauna's chest. The sound of explosions reverberated in the surroundings as everyone tried to endure the bombardment that was flying in their directions. No one could launch a ranged attack towards the teenage boy because Erica and Shauna were hugging him from the front and the back. It was then that they realized that this might have been all part of Zion's plan to use the two beautiful ladies as shields, preventing them from attacking him directly. This made them gnash their teeth in frustration because they couldn't mount an effective strategy against the teenage boy, who was still hugging the Saintess, not willing to let go. 10 minutes later, white smoke rose from the ground as all the wanderers suffered injuries from 13's bombardment. The closest distance they could close from the teenage boy was 10 meters. After that, they would be blown away by the powerful attacks that he unleashed, and he was doing this while hugging Shauna. This was a slap in the face for them, especially for the hero party, who were the strongest fighters in the group. Why you let go first? Erica said as she looked at the painful sight in her surroundings. Why yes, Shauna, who needed to heal everyone, gently pried 13's hands from her body. There was reluctance in her action, but she knew that if she didn't heal everyone, they would not be able to finish their trial. 13 then turned around, and this time, he hugged Erica and buried his head on her chest. What many didn't know was that this wasn't the first time that 13 had done something like this. Whenever Erica slept beside the teenage boy, he would subconsciously reach out to her and do something similar. It was as if he was seeking the warmth of a mother, which he never had in the past. For her, Zion was a very strong person. The only time he showed a vulnerable side to him was whenever he slept. There were even times when he would cry in his sleep, calling out the names of people whom she thought were his friends. But soon, she realized that these people might not just be ordinary friends because of the sadness that she felt whenever Zion calls out their name. After discovering this, she almost always slept beside him during the night because this was the only way that she could support him. She wanted to make him feel safe in her arms and tell him that everything was going to be fine. From the very start, Erica knew that the one they were fighting was Zion. Their guide, Alro, said that according to the ancient records, the boss of the 13th floor would only be an avatar of a monster that would match the current strength of the challengers. So when Zion appeared, she knew then and there that the one standing in front of them was the vulnerable teenage boy, whom she hugged in her sleep every night. How could she have the heart to attack him when she knew that he might get hurt? So, she never cast her strongest spells, which could blow away a third of the Colosseum if she wished for it. While Erica was thinking of what to do next, a sigh escaped 13's lips. Thank you, Erica, 13 said as he continued to hug the young lady in his arms. I had a nice, long dream, and I only woke up just a minute ago. Was it a good dream? Erica asked as she lightly patted 13's head. It was a good dream, 13 replied, his body trembling. Suddenly, Erica felt something warm and wet falling on her chest. This was a very familiar feeling to her, so she held Zion tighter, letting him cry out the sadness in his heart. During his battle against the system god, he had overloaded his soul core, which resulted in it getting damaged. Because of this, he entered a comatose state as his soul core started its emergency repair. Since he was unable to leave the Colosseum at that time, he was sent to the core of the Temple of Courage, which assisted him in repairing his soul core. But just as his soul core was being rebooted, the challenges appeared. So the core of the temple, which was responsible for its operations, sent out 13 as their final opponent. In order to even the odds, the core of the temple created a replica of the Ruii Jingu Bang, giving 13 a fighting chance against his opponents. From the beginning, 13 was only fighting through instinct. His consciousness hadn't returned yet to his body. But, despite all that, his body reacted to the people that he was close to. Zion treated Sherry as a little sister, so although she was unconscious, his body remembered, and he didn't make any move to harm her. He also wanted her to pass the trial, so the core of the temple made an exception. He also couldn't bring himself to hurt Shanu and Diana, whom he believed to be very good girls. As for Erica, there was just something in her that made 13 want to subconsciously give her a good spanking. During the phase of the battle, 13 felt a coldness in his heart. It was as if he had returned to being the unfeeling system that he was in the past. His battle with the system god forced him to push himself to the limit, damaging his soul core in the process, forcing him to retreat to the deepest part of his consciousness. But after Sherry hugged him, a bit of warmth seeped in, which slowly pulled 13 from the darkness that he was at. When Sherry disappeared, 13 felt himself falling once more in the darkness. However, a hand reached out to him and grabbed him tight. Slowly but surely, he was pulled away from the darkness and found himself surrounded by all of his hosts. It was the most wonderful dream he ever had. Usually, whenever he slept, he relived the memories of his hosts' deaths. This was also the reason why he subconsciously reached out to embrace others. Their warmth soothed his broken soul. Like a baby in his mother's arms, he felt safe in her embrace. Finally, his soul core made a successful reboot, and he found himself being hugged by Erica. After thanking the sorceress, the countdown timer on top of his head disappeared completely. The trial wasn't about defeating Zion. The trial was whether the Wanderers could survive until he regained his consciousness. Since 13 never wished to harm the Wanderers, he didn't kill any of them, which technically allowed them to survive until the end. Suddenly, all the Wanderers inside the arena noticed that their bodies were glowing faintly. The majority of them cheered because they were now finally going home. However, there were others who felt frustrated because of this result. Roland, Derek, Joshua, Mildred, Diana, and Siri were among those people. They, who always wanted to become stronger, felt that they still had a long way to go. Stella, on the other hand, stared at the teenage boy with a calm expression on her beautiful face. No one could tell what she was thinking, but the experience that she had been through taught her a lot of things. Finally, 13 pulled back and smiled at Erica, whose body was now almost transparent. "I'll see you later," 13 said. "Okay." Erica nodded as she and the 300 Wanderers, who fought 13, all shot toward the sky like pillars of light. All challengers passed the final trial of courage. 13 chuckled before he gazed at the Wanderers on the audience stands and made the "come over here" gesture. There were still Wanderers that needed to go home, and since he was chosen as the final boss of this stage, he would make sure to beat them all up before sending them back home to their loved ones, who were waiting for them in Pangea. 13 watched as he sent off the last batch of Wanderers back home to Pangea. Since the temple had recognized him as the final boss for this occasion, he had the authority to pass or fail anyone. Of course, he didn't make it easy for them and attacked everyone with the intention of training them. Unlike the first battle, he didn't summon any fire bullets nor did he extend his golden staff. He simply attacked them using his martial technique, leaving them lying on the ground and groaning in pain. Even though he didn't have any more Wanderers he needed to fight, 13 remained standing in the arena because there was one last challenger that he needed to fight. They all had it easy. "Will you give me an easy time as well?" A middle-aged man with dark brown skin and brown eyes appeared dozens of meters from 13 and eyed him with a smile. "You're the demonic salamander, right?" 13 asked. "How should I address you?" "You may call me Malik," Malik replied. "I can pass you right now if you want," 13 said. "But do you mind if I ask you a question?" "Speak." "The winners of this challenge will be sent to the place where they need to go. How about you? Where do you need to go?" Malik pondered if he should answer this question or not. After all, he was not obligated to tell the human in front of him where he wanted to go. However, since he believed that this was all preordained by fate, he decided to answer the question. "Gamora," Malik answered, I want to return to Gomorrah. Then, can I ask you a favor? 13 inquired. In return, I'll pass you without problems. What kind of favor? Malik arched an eyebrow. He didn't dare underestimate the human in front of him because he knew that Zion was the one who defeated the ancient eight-headed serpent. Since this battle was supposed to be fair, that meant that the teenage boy would be granted enough powers to equal him. Malik had been one of the spectators in the previous battles, so he had a good grasp of 13's abilities. Although he believed that he had a good chance of winning, he might still get injured, which would be a very dangerous thing to happen if he were to return to Gomorrah. The homeworld of the Jinn was ruled by the strong, and any ambitious Jinn would be able to rise as long as an opportunity was presented to them. If he returned in an injured state, the chances of him being killed were very high. Because of this, he didn't want to fight the teenage boy, so doing him a favor might not be a bad thing. If we ever meet for a second time, I want you to promise that you will not kill me and any of my companions. Deal? 13 proposed. Deal, Malik answered in a heartbeat. Why? Do you have plans on going to Gomorrah? I don't. 13 shook his head. But no one knows what the future will bring. I just want to have one less enemy if I ever find myself in your world, or you suddenly appear in my world. Malik nodded because this wasn't a bad answer. Very well. If ever our paths cross again, I will spare you and your companions, Malik promised. Good. 13 pointed his golden staff at the demonic salamander. You pass. Just like everyone who passed the trial, Malik's body glowed faintly and shot up toward the heavens. 13's gaze then landed on the other monsters who were still in the arena, including the Lizardman commander, Drazit, who had accompanied them all the way to the Temple of Courage. I will now send all of you back to Fractured Heaven, 13 said as he scanned the faces of the monsters, including Ratatoska, who had asked 13 to send him back to the Ratkins, with the Origin Shard in hand. Since the Origin Shard had already recognized the teenage boy as its master, even if they were far apart, he could recall it with a thought as long as he was in Solterra. In order to make the Rat Men less anxious and allow Ratatoska to have character growth as a hero, he agreed to the White Ratman's request. Drazit was having an internal battle inside of him. A part of him wanted to return to his tribe, but the latter half wished to continue traveling with 13. Since the monsters like Jiga, Rocky, Blackie, Hercules, the trolls, and the ogres could accompany the teenage boy on his journey, he was tempted to join their ranks. He had already discussed this matter with 13, and the teenage boy said that if Drazit was serious about coming with him, he might not be able to return home ever again. Faced with this hard choice, Drazit made an equally hard decision. That was to follow 13 wherever he may go. Raising the golden staff in his hands, he acknowledged the monsters as challengers and passed them in their final trial. Those who passed the trial all had their ranks increased by a realm, giving them something for their troubles. Let's meet again, Zion, Ratatoska said as he held the Origin Shard of the Ratmen. I'm sure that we will meet again. When we meet, you better become super strong, 13 replied in a teasing tone. I might need your help one day, so don't disappoint me. Ratatoska nodded. The debt I owe you cannot be repaid so easily. If we are destined to meet again, I will do my best to repay the favor. All right. 13 smiled. May fortune follow you wherever you go. 13 then pointed his staff in Ratatoska's direction, allowing him to return home to the Fractured Heaven, which would soon become part of Absolute Heaven. They would no longer be isolated from the world, and perhaps after a year or two, those who survived would migrate or expand their kingdoms to join the battle in the lands of Solterra. Arlo and the other Absolutes, who served as the guides of the Wanderers, stared at 13 with awe and admiration. Your people are now free, 13 declared. The restrictions placed upon all of you will now disappear. You will be able to raise your ranks past the champion rank and become true overlords of your own domain. But whether the Absolutes will regain their former glory isn't certain. It will not be an easy task. However, you know, right? From this moment onward, you all owe me a debt that I will ask you to repay in the future. Arlo and the rest of the Absolutes placed their closed fist over their chest and made a pledge. The debt we owe will be repaid in full. The heavens will be our witness. 13 smiled faintly before looking up at the sky. His body started to glow, and soon, he too ascended to the heavens to return to the place where he needed to be, within the celestial realm. 13 happily rubbed his hands together as he looked at the Laplace demon with the smile of a merchant. Tiona, who was coiled on his neck, kissed her master repeatedly because she missed him terribly. "Don't give us that look," Laplace demon said, the corner of his lips twitching. "We'll not cheat on your rewards, okay?" "Of course, I believe that I will not be cheated for all of my hard work," 13 replied. The request that I asked for will also be added to my rewards, right?" "You annoying." Laplace demon clicked his tongue as he reached out to take the black flag of the parade of 100 demons from 13's hand. The number of monsters that 13 could add to his black flag was only around 100 monsters. However, he asked for it to be upgraded so that he could add 100 more monsters to it. Of course, Laplace demon didn't agree to his request and lowered the additional slots to 50. 13 understood that Laplace demon and the one had already made a compromise, so he agreed to it. All in all, with 150 monsters under his command, he would be able to summon 300 of them, including their clones. And each monster would possess an additional 149 skills in their arsenal, making them incredibly deadly in battle. 13 also requested an increase in the number of people whom he could bestow martial skills upon outside his family. After careful negotiations, the one agreed to add 10 more people who could benefit from 13's rune magic. Of course, that wasn't all the rewards given to him. Since he couldn't gain anything in Solterra the normal way, Laplace demon and the one agreed to personally give him his rewards based on his contribution. After upgrading the flag of the parade of 100 demons, 13 handed his Soul Eater armor to Laplace demon to give it some upgrades as well. Laplace demon had given it 50% resistance to wind, water, fire, and earth, allowing the armor to resist a good portion of the 4 elemental attacks. He also gave it the ability that allowed 13 to breathe and move quickly underwater, which would increase his survivability. Aside from the upgrades, the currency that they had agreed on was beast cores. Since 13 didn't really need weapons and armor, his father, Gerald, could craft them for him. He just asked for beast cores to fuel his rune magic. Also, he needed to give Camazotz a new armor, which would be forged from the scales of Orokai, making the death bat less likely to die in battle. He would also need beast cores for that, so he asked Laplace demon for rank 7 and above beast cores as the reward for his hardships. The Jin invasion in the Siny continent would start in a few years, so he would need to finish his preparations before then. All in all, he was given 30 rank 5 beast cores, 20 rank 6 beast cores, 10 rank 7 beast cores, 5 rank 8 beast cores, and 1 rank 9 beast core. The reason why he asked for 30 rank 5 beast cores was due to the fact that he could give them to wanderers, allowing them to absorb them during their first wandering. This was something that shouldn't be allowed. But who was 13? After seeing him use 2 worlds as hostages, Laplace demon and the one decided to turn a blind eye to his shamelessness. 13 planned to let Remy and Rhea absorb a rank 5 beast core even though they were still many years away from their first wandering. This would ensure that they would gain the best starting point before they even entered the world of Solterra, making them pseudo-wanderers. Last but not the least, 13 had asked for an artifact called Boltron, which he intended to use for his next project. After getting all of his rewards, the teenage boy bid the celestial realm goodbye, and he was sent back to Pangea. Just like when he first returned after completing his 13 trials, another phenomenon manifested before he was teleported back to the world. But this time, the military was prepared and had cleared the teleportation gate where 13 would make an appearance in advance. The skies above the teleportation gate were covered with dark clouds, and thunder boomed in the heavens. Suddenly, a single thunderbolt descended from the sky and hit the ground with a force that sent a mini shockwave in the surroundings. When 13 opened his eyes, he found himself surrounded by military personnel, who hurriedly escorted him to the Humvee they had prepared beforehand. While he was an ordinary rookie in Solterra, he still held a very high position within the central government. After the battle in the Rigel continent ended, his rank was promoted to Brigadier General, making him the youngest general in the army. His other position was the Supreme Commander and Strategist of the Alliance, granting him great prestige among the different factions. Erica, who had arrived earlier, was already in the Humvee, waiting for his arrival. "What took you so long?" Erica asked. "Laplace Demon asked for my autograph," 13 replied. The corner of Erica's lips twitched after hearing the teenage boy's reply. Laplace Demon was someone whom not many wanderers could meet even if they wanted to, and the boy beside her casually said that the demon even asked for his autograph. "Do you really think that I'm gullible or something?" Erica scoffed. "Yes," 13 replied. "Why you?" Erica didn't hold back and tried to pinch 13's cheeks, but he blocked her hands and counterattacked, pinching Erica's cheek instead. "Ouch! Hey, stop it. I'll stop if you stop asking for trouble." The special team who were assigned to escort Zion and Erica to their barracks couldn't help but smile because the two teenagers seemed to get along with each other very much. After making sure that Erica stayed put, 13 finally asked the soldiers a question. "Where are we going?" 13 asked. "So, we will head to the barracks first," the special unit that was assigned to escort 13 replied. "The field marshal and the grand marshal ordered that once you arrive, we should take you to the barracks first so that they can come to meet the two of you personally." 13 nodded because he didn't mind talking to the two highest-ranked people in the central government before going home to see the people who were eagerly waiting for his return. When 13 arrived at the barracks, he was welcomed with the sight of all soldiers lined up to welcome him. Erica, who was seated beside him, looked at this grand welcome with a faint smile on her face. Although she knew that the soldiers were there to welcome Zion, and not her, she still felt proud because the teenage boy's achievements were also her achievements. At least, that was what she believed. When 13 disembarked from the Humvee, he gave everyone a salute. "At ease," 13 ordered before heading straight towards the barracks without looking back. Truth be told, he was still very exhausted from the final trial and simply wished to rest for a day or two to fully recover. However, he knew that he had responsibilities, so he decided to endure until he was done talking to the field marshal and the grand marshal. "We're finally alone." Erica plopped on the chair inside 13's office. "I just want to go home, take a nice bath, then sleep." "I feel the same," 13 replied. "It has been a very long and arduous journey." "We spent a little over half a year in that trial," Erica commented. "But I have a feeling that it could have lasted longer if you weren't there. In fact, clearing that kind of trial in less than a year is already a great achievement on its own." "Thank you, Zion. I am very lucky to be on the same mission as you. If you weren't there, we might have already failed in the second trial. There is no possible way we can defeat that Majin King on our own." "Then can I sue you for sexual harassment?" 13 inquired. "You took advantage of me many times during that mission." "Excuse me." Erica arched an eyebrow. "Shouldn't it be me who should sue you for sexual harassment? Do you know that almost every night you bury your head on my—" "Never mind." The sorceress knew that 13 was different from the other teenagers, so she didn't mind having some skinship with him. In fact, there were even times when she lost her faith in her feminine charms because the teenage boy was like a rock and didn't show any emotions or reactions during the time that they were together. Sherry, who was also together with her, also noticed 13's lack of interest in the opposite sex. They didn't know if he was just too young or just had strong willpower. If two girls slept and hugged you almost every night, there should have been some kind of reaction, right? But there was none. 13 treated them as if they were his sisters. At times, she even felt like he was treating them like children, which had made her try to tease him using sexy night dresses she wouldn't dare to wear in front of Roland or the other members of the hero party. Unfortunately, 13 would just comment things like "that looks good on you" or "I think I prefer the black one over the white one." There are times when he would also say things like "I think red is also good because it matches your hair." As for Sherry, 13 would only let her wear pajamas, which he had donated to her from his own inventory. "Hey, do you know about the Zion virus?" Erica asked because she was feeling bored. "Shani always uses purification spells on me and Sherry because she is worried that we got that kind of virus." "Zion virus?" 13 frowned. Does such a virus strain exist? But before they could delve into the matter, two projections suddenly appeared inside 13's office, which made the two of them stand on attention. When the Grand Marshal, Lawrence Seaton, and Field Marshal, Tristan Summers, appeared on the projection. 13 and Erica promptly gave them their salutes. The two highest-ranking officers of the central government returned their salute, then asked the two of them to sit. First and foremost, congratulations to the two of you for successfully completing your missions, Lawrence said. I was expecting that you would return after a year or two, but I didn't expect that you would be able to finish your missions this fast. I would love to tell the two of you to have a nice, long rest, but this is not possible at this point in time. Several dimensional gates have opened in the Sinai continent, and although the main invading force is still 2.5 years away, the number of dimensional gates is steadily increasing. Right now, we are only dealing with Tier 1 and Tier 5 gates, so it's still manageable. However, we estimated that the frequency of the materialization of these gates would further increase in the next few months. While we are confident that the Sinai faction and the central government could still handle them at the moment, it is always good to have more people on the ground. So, when do you think you will be ready to go to the Sinai faction, Zion and Erica? 13 pondered a bit before giving his answer. I'll go to the Sinai continent 2 years from now, 13 answered. I still have things to finish on my end, but I will send the Green Lanterns to go there and help with the evacuation and extermination missions. Erica, who didn't expect that Zion only planned to go to the Sinai faction after 2 years, frowned. Since she was a part of the hero party, she would probably need to go there after a month or two to boost the morale of the defenders. Even Lawrence and Tristan didn't expect that Zion would wait for 2 years before he headed to the Sinai continent to take command of the battlefield. Seeing their expression, 13 smiled and spoke his mind out loud. Renz Elrod, the strategist of the Dvalan Federation, will remain as the main strategist during the earlier phase of the invasion, 13 stated. He has enough experience to guide everyone during this period of time. I'm sure that all of you agree with me, right? Lawrence nodded. Currently, Renz is in the Sinai continent, helping with the chain of command. He is based on the southwest part of the continent, making sure that the hordes of low-ranked jinns will not affect the evacuation missions. I'm sure that the Sinai faction has their own strategist at the moment, so it will be best if they gain some military merits during this period. If I rain on their parade, wouldn't they just hate me for stealing their thunder? I don't want that to happen. Tristan chuckled because he understood what 13 was planning. During the earlier phase of the war, the young man wanted the military officers responsible for leading different teams and squads to gain some combat experience when it came to Jinn invasions. If 13 took command at this point in time, they would be forced to listen to his orders, preventing them from making their own judgment, which would be important during crucial missions. Also, it will be best for the hero party to train for a year before they are sent to the Sinai continent, 13 stated. Don't worry, I'll make sure to train them properly, so they won't die when the Jinn invasion begins. Erica almost cried out in alarm after hearing 13's proposal. They had suffered a hellish training with him for months, so she believed that a year-long training would probably kill her. But before she could voice out her complaint, 13 smiled in her direction, making her shudder uncontrollably. I'm doomed. I'm dead. Erica wept internally because she was certain that Zion would drastically increase the difficulty of their training routine. Although she was really thankful for him because she had improved a lot in a short period of time, she was still hesitant to undergo another round of rigorous training under his supervision. I heard that you've trained the hero party for a month in the Leventis residence, Tristan commented. My daughters, Rihanna and Shana, always praise you for your training regimen. They were moved to tears because of how good it was. 13 nodded. It is also because of their training that we are able to learn our mission faster this time around. The hero party bulldozed their way through the trials and paved the path for our early return. This is why I humbly request that you allow them to train with me for a year. I promise that they will become more powerful during that time. Lawrence and Tristan glanced at Erica to see her reaction. Knowing that her life was on the line, the sorceress shook her head in order to let her superiors know that she didn't plan on being trained by Zion again. Lawrence and Tristan exchanged a look with each other before smiling at the same time. We can't possibly force the hero party to do a training that they might not like, Lawrence said, which made Erica give him a thumbs up. HMPH, do you think I'll allow you to train me again? Erica laughed internally. over my dead, sexy body. However, Tristan's comment made her have second thoughts. But if they ever decide to join the training, we will increase their salary and the resources allocated to them fivefold, Tristan declared. Not only that, they will receive other benefits, as well as discounts to certain military equipment. The gears on Erica's mind started to move at a rapid pace. She was calculating the pros and cons of joining 13's training, and in the end, the pros won over the cons. One more thing. Please help me find Sherry Weaver, 13 stated. Currently, she is in the Sinai continent. I want her to join the training as well. 13 also mentioned a few more people that he wished to personally train, including Christopher, Colbert, Alexis, Paul, Pietro, and Piper, who were the squad captains of his battalion. He wished to raise their fighting prowess in this period of time so that they would be ready for the upcoming Jinn invasion. After ironing out the details, Lawrence and Tristan agreed to reach out to the members of the hero party, as well as the other wanderers whom 13 had specified. All of them would then be sent to the Leventis family residence 3 months from now, giving them enough time to spend with their family, as well as handle everything they need to before starting their training camp. 13 also had a few things he needed to take care of, which he preferred to settle before he started training others. He needed Gerald to forge armor for Camazotz, using the scales of the Magian King, giving the Death Bat his confidence back. This was a good opportunity to allow Gerald to try his luck and craft a mythical or legendary equipment using the body parts of a Magian King. 13 also needed to start his Bolt Run project, which would become another one of his trump cards in a few years. Erica, who had hastily left the barracks in fear that 13 would drag her to his family's residence, headed straight to her home to see her parents. She was happy that she wouldn't have to see 13 again for 3 months and vowed to use her remaining time to prepare her mind and body for the hellish training that she would later go through. It wasn't only her who felt thankful that they still had a few months before they met with 13. Roland, Joshua, Mildred, and Diana were also not too keen on a second round of training under 13's guidance. Only Derek seemed excited, and it might be partly due to the fact that he had a huge crush on Shasha. 13 was tempted to cross the swordsman's name from the list, but he decided to keep the latter because he had performed well during this expedition. Just as 13 was about to enter the gate of his house, he saw a little girl running in his direction with her arms spread wide. Buddha! Rhea, who was told that her brother was about to go home, waited patiently near the gate for his arrival. 13, whose soul core was still in recovery, felt his heart melt as soon as he saw his little sister running in his direction. The system of cannon fodders was weak against children, maybe because from his point of view, they were innocent and must be protected. He didn't hesitate to crouch down and catch Rhea, who had jumped into his embrace and spun her around, making her giggle. "Have you been a good girl when I was away?" 13 asked before kissing Rhea's chubby cheeks. "Yes," Rhea replied and returned 13's kisses. While the two were having their reunion, 13 felt someone hug his back, making him smile. "Welcome back, brother," Remy said. "It's good to be back, Remy," 13 replied. "I missed you." "I missed you too, brother." Remy smiled happily because her brother returned earlier than expected. Back then, she had waited for 6 whole years before she was able to see him again. This made Remy feel anxious. She was worried that the same thing would happen, and she wouldn't be able to see her brother again for another 6 years. Fortunately, her fears didn't come to pass, making her sigh in relief. Soon, more of 13's family members went to greet him, and before he knew it, his entire family had surrounded him in a group hug, making him feel things he had never felt before. After spending many years as a human, 13 had learned what familial love was. Back then, he didn't really treat his family members as family. At that time, he thought of them as mere tools that would become his stepping stones to achieve his goals. But he no longer thought that way. For their sake, he would fight or kill anyone who wished to harm them. He wouldn't even bat an eye even if the entire world became his enemy as long as the people important to him would be safe. "Rhea, pull Pop's beard," 13 ordered. "It's ticklish." Rhea giggled and playfully tugged on Gerald's beard, making everyone chuckle. "Let's go inside," Alessia stated. We can't just stand here all day. 13 nodded and pulled Rhea into his arms, carrying her, and entered the house, feeling at peace after a long and harsh journey. The first thing he did was to take a bath so that he could take a nap until dinner. But, just as he climbed onto his bed, he heard a knock on his door. "Come in," 13 said. The door opened and he saw Rhea and Remy, who had come to visit him. When the little girl saw her brother on the bed, she didn't hesitate to climb on it as well and laid beside him. "Brother, are you going to take a nap?" Remy asked. "Yes," 13 replied. "Then, can Rhea and I take a nap with you?" "Of course." Rhea curled up on 13's chest and closed her eyes while sucking on her thumb. The teenage boy hugged the little girl and held her close like a small pillow. Remy, on the other hand, hugged 13 from behind, treating him as her hug pillow. It didn't take long for the three of them to fall asleep together. Alessia, who was peeking from the door, smiled and looked behind her, giving everyone a thumbs up. She then closed the door and headed downstairs with her husband, Mikhail, and Shasha. They had just stepped into the living room when they heard a knock on the door, which made Alessia and Gerald exchange a glance with each other. Just as they expected, the members of the Leventis family came to visit when they heard that 13 had returned to his family's residence. Arthur, Callista, Michael, and Hans were invited inside the living room, where they were offered refreshments. "Where is that no-good grandson of mine?" Arthur asked as soon as he sat on the couch. "Is sleeping with Rhea and Remy," Gerald answered. "He looks very tired, so we plan to only wake him up when it's time for dinner." "I see." Arthur nodded in understanding. Although he called 13 his no-good grandson, the boy actually brought in a lot of resources from the Rigel continent to their family. Michael, who had been assigned to satisfy the demands of the Earth Dragons, had also performed well during 13's absence and had formed a harmonious relationship with them. He wasn't aware that after the Earth Dragons had fought alongside 13 against the ancient eight-headed serpent, the three of them admired Zion more and were now hell-bent on having a good relationship with him. In fact, the Earth Dragons were now a bit tempted to switch sides, no longer wanting to continue working for their master who would descend into the Rigel continent when the right time came. "Old man, why have you come looking for my son?" Gerald asked. Although his relationship with his father had been better compared to what it was several years ago, he had no intention of accepting Arthur's invitation to be reinstated to the Leventis family. The reason for his rejection was very simple. He believed that after a few years, with the help of his son, Zion, his family would become the main branch of the Leventis family. The mere thought of making that goal a reality was enough to make Gerald refuse any and all kinds of invitations from Arthur, who had no idea what the father and son pair was planning to do. If he only knew that Zion and Gerald planned to usurp him and the main branch of the Leventis family, he would not hesitate to give the two of them a good slap and force them to wake up to reality. Although 13 had expected it, he didn't think that Arthur and Michael would be right by his face when he woke up. The sun had just set on the horizon, and a feast was prepared to celebrate his safe return. Everyone ate and chatted happily while they listened to 13's recount of his latest mission in Solterra. Arthur and Lady Callista were amused when they heard that their grandson had made the Wanderers build wagons and trained them for a month before heading to start their mission. They also found it quite interesting that the heirs of the Sini faction appeared in the same location where 13 was sent for his mission. When the teenage boy narrated how the battle between the lizard men and the rat men concluded, everyone at the dining table looked at him in disbelief. "You beat a rank 8 monster on your own?" Arthur asked in disbelief. "It's just a rank 8 monster," 13 replied. "It's not a big deal." "It is a big deal, Zion," Lady Callista said with a smile. "You just make it sound like it isn't." "Then what happened to the Shard of Origin?" Arthur inquired. "I returned them to the rat men," 13 answered. "What?" Arthur almost pounded the table with his fist in dismay. Fortunately, he was able to hold back and control his impulse. "Why did you return it?" "Why shouldn't I return it?" 13 asked back. "With it, you could have command over an entire race," Arthur explained. "Isn't that a big deal? Even if I don't have it with me, I can still command the rat men race if I want to." 13 shrugged. "I returned it to them so that they can have some peace of mind." "Don't worry, Gramps. I already have a plan in regards to the rat men in absolute heaven. Arthur sighed before nodding in understanding. 13 then continued his tale. After ending the war between the lizard men and the rat men, I led the wanderers to enter a one-way portal, 13 said. That is where we merged with Diana's group. Diana is the crusader of the hero party, just in case you don't know who she is. Then after our merger, we headed to the kingdom of the absolute. Everyone was immersed in 13's storytelling. But when it came to the point where the king of the absolute summoned a Magian king, a deathly silence descended in the dining room. Almost everyone, with the exception of Rhea and Remy, forgot how to breathe due to how shocking Zion's story was. I should have expected something like this. Gerald commented. Every time you undergo a mission in Solterra, you always fight against monsters who can make monarchs run away with their tails behind their legs. Arthur snorted. Don't tell me that you're going to say something like it's just a Magian king like you always do. Clearly, the patriarch of the Leventis family was expecting that 13 would start bragging. However, the scene that he was imagining didn't happen. Fighting against a Magian king is no joke, 13 stated. I asked Cranky for help and invited the 3 Earth Dragons from the Rigel continent as backup, but it was no use. The Magian king was crazy strong and had an extremely fast regeneration rate. Despite giving everything we have and putting our lives on the line, it ended with Cranky dying in order to save my life. At least, I genuinely thought he died back then because he received fatal injuries. Arthur frowned. Cranky is that honey badger that I saw in the Arcadia archipelago, right? 13 nodded. Yes, that's him. He died. Lady Callista asked. She had heard 13 mention before that the honey badger was one of his staunchest allies. Hearing that it received fatal injuries in order to protect 13 made her sigh in her heart. I thought he died, which made me realize that I made a wrong decision, 13 stated. Because of that, I decided to go all out and kill the Magian King. That reminds me. Pops, I have the Magian King's corpse with me. If you can't craft a mythical equipment using a Magian King's body parts, I will disown you. Alessia, Gerald, Arthur, Michael, and Hans almost choked on their saliva because Zion mentioned killing a Magian King as if he had just crushed a bug. Also, the thing that surprised them the most was that he actually got its entire body, which was supposed to be over 100 meters in length. You killed a Magian King? Arthur asked while the corner of his lips twitched uncontrollably. You're going to disown me if I fail to craft a mythical equipment? Gerald asked in disbelief. The answer is yes to both questions, 13 replied before casually taking out a serpent scale that was a meter long from his dimensional storage. Hey Pops, take a good look at his high-quality crafting material. Gerald reached out to grab the black scale with trembling hands. Due to the financial situation of his family, he didn't dare to purchase high-grade crafting materials in the past. Now, he no longer had to worry about money. However, he didn't expect that he would have the opportunity to use a scale from a Magian King to craft equipment. Don't worry, I have hundreds of those scales, so it's fine if you fail on your first try, 13 replied. I almost forgot. The members of the Siny faction and the elites that joined me in the battle against the Magian King were also able to salvage 8's serpent scale. A few want to auction it for money, while the members of the Siny faction plan to have their blacksmiths use it as crafting material. Although the chance is low, there is a possibility that they will be able to successfully craft mythical equipment using that scale. Pops, I let them get the scale so that it can divert the attention of the monarchs and the other prestigious families into using them as crafting materials. I'm not expecting you to succeed after a dozen tries. But if the other blacksmiths are able to craft a mythical gear using a mere one piece or a few pieces of the Magian King's scale, I will really disown you. Gerald nodded. I will make a trip to Solterra and visit that shady organization that you befriended. Their flames of Sylvana will increase my chances of success. Good. 13 smiled before shifting his gaze to Arthur. Gramps, how is Project Nemo going? You should have at least been halfway finished by now, right? Arthur had asked for the blueprint of Nautilus, but it was one of 13's trump cards. Because of this, he had given his grandpa the neutered version of Project Nautilus, which he called Project Nemo. 2 submarines are halfway done, Arthur replied. They will be ready before the full-scale Jin invasion in the Sinai continent. 13 nodded because that was all he needed to hear. As long as the Leventis family succeeded in building the 2 destroyer-class submarines, they wouldn't have to worry about water and sea-type Jins, who could cause problems for the battleships in the sea. They would act as Nautilus escort ships and dominate the underwater battlefield if the situation called for it. After a brief discussion about the projects 13 had asked to be built while he was away, he resumed his storytelling, which made the adults who were listening to him draw a deep breath due to how unbelievable his journey had been. "It's a pleasure to see you again, Gerald," a beautiful drow said with a smile. "I'm sorry for inconveniencing you again, Lady Adira," Gerald replied. No ordinary flame was strong enough to forge materials taken from monsters that were rank 9 and above. In other words, he needed to use the flames of Sylvana, which belonged to the Ordo of Raziel. 13 had a very good relationship with them, so the branch head, Lady Uriel, agreed to let Gerald use the flame for his blacksmithing purposes. Adira, who also had a good relationship with the teenage boy, guided Gerald to their headquarters while asking about Zion's latest exploits. Gerald, who was more than happy to brag about the accomplishments of his son, told the drow about Zion's latest adventure. At first, the drow was smiling, but when the story came to the summoning of the Magian King, the smile on her face stiffened. "Why, you mean to say that you're here to craft equipment using the scales and fangs of a Magian King?" Adira asked in disbelief. "Yes." Gerald blinked in confusion. "Didn't Zion tell you guys about it?" "He did not." Then now you know." Adira almost cursed out loud with drow language. This was the first time anyone was going to use the flames of Sylvana to craft something out of the body parts of a Magian King. This was an unprecedented event, and she instantly thought that news of this must not spread to the other branches no matter what. If this information were to reach certain people, chaos would definitely ensue within the Ordo of Raziel. Mythical-grade equipment was already so rare that only the kings of Solterra wielded them. However, there were emperors, as well as other powerful individuals, who possessed legendary equipments, which had been used to thwart the first Jin invasion of their world. These weapons possessed incredible skills and abilities, and many factions would fight in order to possess one. Although the possibility of Gerald crafting mythical or legendary equipment was low, the possibility still existed, especially since he was using such a very high-grade material. "Don't go to the smithy right now. Also, don't tell anyone about the materials you're going to use," Adira stated. "Let me talk to my master first." Gerald, who seemed to understand what the drow was hinting at, nodded in understanding. "I'm sorry for troubling you, Lady Adira," Gerald replied. "My lips are sealed." Adira nodded before leaving Gerald to talk to her master. In order to safeguard such a secret, they would need to ensure that Gerald would work in a place hidden from the eyes of others, preventing the greed of humans and the other races from finding his scent. Back in Pangea, 13 wiped the sweat on his forehead before looking at his work with satisfaction. Currently, he was doing some modifications to his attack helicopters, enhancing their firepower and overall durability. While he was working hard on his project, the sound of a little girl's giggling reached her ears. "Gidyep!" Rhea shouted. "Go! Go! Go!" Jiga shook his head helplessly as he walked with the little girl mounted on his back. Currently, he was in charge of babysitting Rhea, while Remy trained with the lizard man, Drazit, in close combat. Since the lizard man chose to follow 13, the teenage boy had brought him to Pangea, which was something that the lizard man wasn't expecting to happen. The one had agreed to make Drazit one of 13's beast companions, similar to Jiga and the rest of 13's monster army. Drazit was a general, so he was used to training others, as well as teaching them about strategy. His fighting style was also very different from the other monsters, allowing Remy to learn other attack patterns she hadn't seen before. "T1, help me reattach the rotor blades," 13 ordered. "Okay," T1 replied. After evolving to the next rank, the trolls and ogres were now able to speak, although they were still having problems forming long sentences. Saying 2 to 5 words wasn't a problem for them. An hour later, 13 and the trolls finished modifying his first attack helicopter. It took them almost 5 days to complete the modification because 13 had no choice but to disassemble some of the helicopter's body parts. 1 down, 4 to go, 13 muttered. He needed to complete everything that he needed to work on in the span of 3 months before the hero party, Sherry, and his squad captains arrived in the Leventis residence for their training. A faint smile appeared on his lips as he gazed in the distance. His brother, Mikhail, and sister, Shasha, were currently fighting against the trolls, who had gained more experience during his last mission in Solterra. While Zion's oldest siblings could now defeat rank 6 monsters, they were still unable to defeat rank 6 overlords and sovereigns. Because of this, 13 deemed that training against the trolls would be a good opportunity to gain battle experience. 13 had ordered the trolls to not hold back and fight Mikhail and Shasha seriously. He knew that his siblings were no pushovers, and holding back against them would not help them in their training. Just as 13 was planning to work on the second attack helicopter, his communicator rang. When he saw the name of the caller, he couldn't help but arch an eyebrow, not expecting that this person would contact him at this time. "What's wrong, Renz?" 13 asked. "Is there a problem in the Sinai continent?" Renz Elrod was the strategist of the Dvalan Federation and the brother of the monarch of the Elrod clan. He had a very high status in the alliance, but now he was 13's subordinate, though this arrangement was only known to the two of them. "Do you have any more scales of the Magian King in your possession?" Renz asked. The A's of the Sinai faction, who had witnessed your battle with the Magian King, had brought back a few scales for their clans to use. I was also informed that 2 other scales are currently up for auction, and if my guess is right, the monarch clans will definitely do their best to secure them. My brother is feeling worried that the blacksmiths of his rivals will succeed in crafting a mythical equipment. If that happens, the balance of power will be broken. I had a feeling that you might have a scale or 2 lying around, so I decided to call you in order to negotiate for them. 13 pondered for a bit before giving his reply. Since Renz was now one of his people, he wouldn't mind giving him some benefits if his conditions were met. "I'll give you 2 scales, but I have a condition," 13 stated. "I'm all ears," Renz replied. He and 13 were now on the same side, so he was certain that the teenage boy wouldn't ask for the impossible. He wasn't disappointed and happily agreed to the condition that 13 had asked for him. "Since this is a very sensitive transaction, it will be best if your brother personally collects them here in the Aldebaran continent," 13 added. "Make sure that he wears a disguise. We don't want to have rumors flying around, right?" "Of course," Renz replied with a smile. "I'll make sure to pass that message to him." When the communication ended, 13 glanced towards the southwest and smirked. Truth be told, he was hoping that the blacksmiths of the other monarch clans and the prestigious families would succeed in crafting a mythical-grade equipment. If that happens, the balance of power would indeed be broken. However, the Leventis family wouldn't be too affected by the storm that would wash over the world. "Soon," 13 muttered. He hoped that the changes would happen soon so that the world of Pangea would have a higher chance of survival. 8 serpent scales were known to be brought back to Pangea by the Sinai faction and the elite faction led by David. David and another one of his members had decided to auction the scales in their possession. The 2 other scales belonged to the retainers of the Smith and Lockwood families. These 2 wanderers offered them as a gift to the patriarchs of these 2 prestigious families, earning them great merits for their contribution. Each monarch clan was led by a monarch. Each prestigious family was led by a throne. However, many believed that a throne could beat a monarch as long as they also possessed a mythical-grade equipment. All the blacksmiths in the world couldn't help but look at these scales with bloodshot eyes. In their point of view, being able to craft a mythical or legendary-grade equipment would cement their prestige and their names be written in the history books. It would be the greatest honor for anyone pursuing their craft, so all the powerful families in the world wished to get a share of that pie. Right now, only 2 scales were up for auction, and their value would definitely skyrocket to an astronomical price by the time the bidding ended. Renz knew that his brother would wish to bid for these items, but since Zion was the one who defeated the Magian King, he believed that the cunning teenager also possessed a few scales on his own. This was the reason why he decided to give him a call, and his hunch was proven right. "Brother," Aside from the 2 scales that Zion will give us, make sure to bid on the serpent scales up for auction, Ren's advised. Even if you don't win the bidding, we must not allow the other families to suspect that we already have 2 scales in our possession. Also, Zion asked me to tell you that you should personally pick it up from their residence. Make sure to wear disguise and move incognito. I understand, Wendell replied. You did well, brother. Anything for the Elrod family. By the way, you should also take this opportunity to talk to Zion's parents about a possible alliance through marriage. My nieces are so pretty, and they will definitely be a good match for him. Good. This is really a good idea. Leave it to me. While the 2 brothers were talking, similar things were happening in the world of Pangea, somewhere in the Ceres continent. The monarch of the Ceres clan, Aaron Ashford, frowned as he looked at the black serpent scale that was up for auction. I don't know if these scales are a blessing or curse, Aaron muttered. Right now, the monarchs stood at the apex of the world because not only were they the strongest humans, but they also possessed a mythical-grade equipment each. The scale of a Magian King was a high-grade material that could potentially create a mythical-grade or legendary-grade equipment due to its rank. Whoever possessed it would have the chance to become a powerhouse, which would cause trouble if it landed in the hands of his rivals and competitors. He was very tempted to raid the auction house and steal the serpent scale, but he knew that this was a very bad move. The auction house belonged to the central government, and the items were currently under Lawrence's safekeeping. Just like him, Lawrence was also a monarch, and he was the strongest among them. I guess I have no choice but to bid for it, Aaron thought. However, a thought also passed through his mind. News of Zion Leventis defeating a Magian King had already spread within the inner circles of the monarch clans and prestigious families. At first, no one wanted to believe these stories, but when the serpent scales appeared in the auction, everyone realized that this wasn't propaganda made by the central government and the Leventis family to boost Zion's popularity. According to eyewitness reports, the Laplace demon came and took the corpse of the Magian King, preventing anyone from getting its body. However, Aaron couldn't help but doubt this information. He didn't believe that Zion wasn't able to receive anything from his trouble, which led him to assume that the Leventis family had some serpent scales in their possession as well. The thing that Aaron was afraid of was that there would come a time when the prestigious families would gain mythical-grade equipments and challenge their rule. If that really happened, the power and prestige of the monarch clans we're currently enjoying would come to an end as well. Aaron snapped a finger, and a man wearing a black suit appeared beside him. Order our spies in the Aldebaran continent to pay extra attention to the Leventis family, Aaron ordered. If there is a chance, make sure to infiltrate the residence of Zion Leventis. There might be a serpent scale lying around in their home. So, I don't know if you know about this information, but Zion's father, Gerald, is also a blacksmith, the man in black replied. It is possible that he has possession of the scale and might be crafting it as we speak. He can't craft something like that. Aaron shook his head. Only those with unique flames could break down materials that came from monsters that are rank 9 and above. Gerald has been kicked out from the family, and the highest grade equipment that he has put up for sale are only of the gold grade. He hasn't succeeded in crafting an adamantine grade equipment even once. This means that he doesn't possess a unique flame. Even if he has it in his possession, he will still be unable to craft the serpent scale. The man in black nodded in agreement. I understand. We will do as you say, my lord. After giving the monarch a respectful bow, the man disappeared, leaving Aaron alone in his thoughts. Of all the thrones that ruled the prestigious families, Arthur Leventis was said to be able to fight monarchs because he was a pseudo-monarch. He stood at the peak of the throne and only needed one opportunity to break through its ranks. If he ever gained a mythical weapon, Aaron knew that he would have another rival in his goal of world domination. A flash of killing intent appeared at the depths of the monarch's eyes as he contemplated whether he should go to the Aldebaran continent and eliminate Arthur and Zion Leventis before they became strong enough to challenge him. However, he pushed this matter aside for the time being. I'll wait after the Jinn invasion in the Sinai continent has concluded, Aaron mused. It will not be too late to kill them once that threat has been dealt with. Once I'm done using them, I will personally end their lives. Aaron felt very good about himself because he believed that Arthur's and Zion's lives were under his control. If only he knew that Arthur was keeping a secret and that 4 mythical-grade equipments were already in the hands of the Leventis family, he wouldn't be too confident in his plan to eliminate the Leventis family and dispose of one of the greatest threats that could challenge the position of the Monarch clans. A storm was brewing in the skies of Pangea, and it was only a matter of time before the rain started to fall upon the ambitions of the people who wished to make the world dance at the palm of their hands. 2 weeks after 13 returned to Pangea. "You're finally here, Zion," Erica said with a smile as she gave the teenage boy a hug. "My mother forced me to come," 13 replied stiffly. Erica smirked before pulling the teenage boy to the VIP room especially reserved for them. "Your mother is worried because you've been working non-stop since you arrived, so she asked me to come with you to this place," Erica commented. For some reason, Rihanna had added Zion's mother, Alessia, to their group chat, which was a girl-exclusive group. There, Alessia complained that Zion was overworking himself and mentioned how she was worried that he might collapse from exhaustion. As a solution, Erica proposed that she take 13 to the auction house where the serpent scales were about to be auctioned. There were many other good items, including rare avatars, that would be put up for auction, so Erica thought that this was a good opportunity for the teenage boy to relax and unwind. Since the auction was going to be held in the Aldebaran continent, the ruling factions were given VIP seats, including Zion's family. As the supreme commander of the alliance, his prestige was something that no one could ignore. Arthur and Michael, who had also been invited to the auction, glanced at the young man who was being pulled by the sorceress toward the staircase leading to the VIP rooms. "It seems that Zion has a good relationship with her," Arthur said. "Make sure to give gifts to her family later." "Understood, Father," Michael replied. Arthur was having a headache as of late because many families were inquiring if it was possible to have an arranged marriage with Zion. Of course, he prioritized selecting the candidates born from the Monarch clans, as well as the prestigious families. However, his no-good grandson flatly told him that he wasn't interested in romance and that he should just decline all of them. In the end, Arthur was forced to tell those who planned to form an alliance with their family through marriage that his grandson was still too young and was not interested in having a romantic relationship with anyone. But Zion's response only made the patriarch of the Leventis believe that his grandson was just picky. So, Arthur approached this issue from another angle and started paying close attention to the girls who hung around with his grandson, like Erica and the other members of the hero party. Just like everyone else who was in the auction house, they had come to bid for the serpent scales that belonged to a Magian king. He already knew that Gerald had dozens of serpent scales in his possession, but he still needed to bid so that his rivals wouldn't think that the Leventis family already had some of these serpent scales in their possession. Of course, the other families had their suspicions, but since they had no proof, they could only make assumptions. This was also Erica's first time being inside an auction house, so she was looking forward to it. Her family wasn't really rich, and she was the only one supporting them. Because of this, she never had access to these places, which required large amounts of money. But since Zion was given an invitation, Alessia asked Erica to drag Zion to the auction house so that he could have a day off from his work. As the teenage boy sat on the couch of the spacious VIP room, he found himself relaxing completely. He hadn't had much sleep as of late. What he had been doing was quite complicated, and the calculations required to ensure that everything would work perfectly took a lot of his mental power. Erica, who sat by his side, noticed that the teenage boy was breathing softly, which signified that he had fallen asleep. Since the auction would start in half an hour, she decided to let him sleep for a while and focused her attention on the snacks provided in their private room. Each VIP room was complete with a mini buffet, which the VIPs could enjoy to their heart's content. If they wished for it, they could even call for a female staff to serve them. But 13 and Erica didn't want others disturbing their privacy. While all this was happening, the members of the Monarch clans and prestigious families had arrived and entered their own VIP rooms, each with their own agenda. Aaron Ashford didn't come, but he ordered his son, Claude Ashford, to bid for the serpent scales. Their goal was to get both of them, but he knew that this was going to be an uphill battle. The prestigious families were hell-bent on securing at least one of these snake scales because if their blacksmith managed to craft a mythical equipment, their status would rise, and maybe they would join the ranks of the monarch clans. Influential families and other powerful factions also wished to acquire the serpent scales as well, wanting their families to become part of the prestigious families. For them, that would be an honor that couldn't be measured in gold. Finally, after waiting for half an hour, a beautiful lady wearing a red dress climbed the stage and scanned the surroundings with a sweet smile on her face. "Everyone, the grand auction is about to start," the beautiful lady said. "My name is Dorothy, and I hope that everyone follows the rules of the auction house. Threats, ultimatums, violence, and the like are strictly prohibited inside the auction house. Anyone who breaks any of the rules will either be forced to leave or sentenced with a criminal offense. This auction is supervised by the central government, so I hope that everyone will give the Grand Marshal some face and not cause trouble for everyone here in the auction house." After the introductions, Dorothy then clapped her hands once, and one of the staff brought out the first item for auction. "The first item to be auctioned is an adamantine-grade sword," Dorothy said with a smile. "This adamantine grade is equipped with 4 abilities: auto-sharpen, auto-repair, enhanced penetration, and flame sword ability. The starting bid will be 100,000 gold coins. Each bid will have an increment of 1,000. Bidding starts now. 120,000. 150. 200. The less powerful families joined the bidding because an adamantine-grade item with 4 abilities was considered very rare. Most weapons and armor only had 1 or 2 abilities, so almost everyone wished to possess such an item. Although it was only of the adamantine grade, it was the closest to a mythical grade weapon, so everyone wished to take it home. 13, who was sleeping peacefully, slid on the couch. His head landed on Erica's lap, who was busy eating a macaron. The sorceress glanced down at the teenage boy and pondered whether she should wake him up or not. After careful consideration, she decided that there was no harm in letting Zion sleep a little longer, especially since only the first half of the auction had started. The main representatives of the monarch clans and the prestigious families didn't join the bidding and simply chatted among themselves while waiting for the good items to come. Everyone looked friendly on the surface, but deep down, they were sizing each other up, wanting to get as much information as possible about their rivals while hiding their own secrets deep inside their greedy hearts. The representatives of the monarch clans and the prestigious families were all gathered in one extremely spacious room, receiving the ultimate VIP treatment from the staff of the auction house. They rarely got together, so whenever there was an opportunity, they used this setup to mingle with each other. This was also the perfect method to play their word games with each other, where they tried to gain information that even their spies weren't able to get. "Arthur, are you going to bid for the serpent scales?" the monarch who ruled the Aldebaran continent, Trevor Remington, asked. "I'll bid for it," Arthur replied. "You will." Claude Ashford, who was the representative of the Ashford family, sneered. "Isn't the one who killed the Magian King your grandson? If you're going to tell us that he wasn't able to grab a single scale from that monster, then obviously that will be a lie." Claude didn't even bother to act respectfully towards Arthur despite the latter being older than him. He simply treated him as an equal because, in his eyes, the prestigious families were beneath the monarch clans. Arthur was already used to Claude's antics, but he couldn't be bothered to argue with him. In his eyes, the Ashford clan was not a big deal, especially now that he had gained 2 mythical-grade equipment of his own. "My grandson is just like his stupid father," Arthur commented. Despite killing a Magian king, that idiot didn't even bother to loot its body before the Laplace demon took the monster's corpse away. What a waste. Arthur did an exaggerated sigh while shaking his head helplessly. Everyone in the room looked at him in disdain because none of them believed his words. They had already asked some eyewitnesses who were there at the scene. They stated that Zion didn't pick up any scales from the ground and only stood at the side while a giant honey badger feasted on the Magian King's core. This brought countless speculations, but at the end of the day, none of them believed that Zion didn't gain anything from his fight against the Magian King. "Still, I've been wondering how your grandson is able to do all of these things," Claude said with a smile. "First, he fought a Magian prince, then the Artemians. After that, he helped the Dvalan Federation in the Rigel continent. And now, his latest exploit is killing a Magian king. All of these feats are something that even the monarchs cannot do by themselves. And yet, your grandson did it. Can you tell me his secret? How is he able to do such things? Arthur snorted. Do you even need to ask such a question? Obviously, he is only able to do all of those amazing things because he inherited my amazing genes. Do you know that famous saying? Like grandfather, like grandson. The people inside the room wanted to spit at the arrogant old man for being shameless. Earlier, he said that Zion was stupid like his father, and now, he was bragging that his grandson was amazing because he inherited his amazing genes. Talk about double standards. Even Michael, who was steadfast and always calm, couldn't stop himself from moving 2 steps away from his father and averted his gaze. This action didn't escape the eyes of the people inside the room, making them pity the right-hand man of the Leventis family, who was known for his impeccable administrative skills. According to our sources, the reason why your grandson succeeded in killing the Magian King is because Laplace Demon offered him some help, Claude stated. But I'm very curious. All of us know that the Laplace Demon isn't someone who shows favoritism to wanderers. But after reviewing all of your grandson's exploits, I can't help but feel that the Laplace Demon favors him too much. What do you think about this? I don't know why the Laplace Demon favors Zion, Arthur replied. But if you have a problem with it, feel free to complain to Laplace Demon. I'll even ask Zion to write you a letter of recommendation if you want. The corner of Claude's lips twitched because the Laplace Demon wasn't a creature that any wanderers could meet just because they wanted to. Although the monarchs and the thrones had seen him in the past, they had only seen him once or twice in their lifetime. As for Zion's recommendation letter, as if something like that would work, Claude, who had been tasked by his father to fish for information, did his best to keep a smile on his face. He knew that Arthur was an old fox, and it would not be easy to dig some information from him. However, he was hoping that the old man would slip up with the help of the people in the VIP room. By the way, our Ashford clan will host the Dragon and Phoenix tournament a year from now, Claude said with a smile. We are gathering the heroes of the younger generation. I hope that Zion can participate in the tourney. My nephews and nieces are dying to compete with him in the arena. The Dragon and Phoenix tournament was held every 3 years, and the host of the event would always be one of the Monarch clans. The next tournament would be hosted by the Ashford clan, which would be held in the Sinai continent. This was their way of boosting the morale of the younger generation, who would help protect the continent from the Jinn invasion. Knowing his grandson's temperament, Arthur pondered a bit before shaking his head. Zion will not join this kind of tournament because he would feel like he is bullying others, Arthur replied. Bullying others? Claude frowned. What do you mean bullying others? Have your nephews and nieces defeated a Magian prince? Arthur arched an eyebrow. Claude's smile stiffened when he heard the old man's question. No, Claude replied. Then can your nephews and nieces kill a Magian king? Of course not. Arthur laughed before raising his hand. One of the waiters dutifully handed him a glass of wine, which Arthur held with a domineering poise. If your nieces and nephew couldn't even do those things, then why the hell would my grandson join that tournament? Arthur shook his head. If Zion were here, he would only have 2 words to say to you and your family members. A deafening silence descended inside the room as everyone waited for the rest of Arthur's words. Knowing that everyone's attention was on him, the patriarch of the Leventis family smirked at Claude before saying the words that Theatine often used against him. Skill issue. Arthur chuckled. As you may already know, my grandson fought against 300 people in the Temple of Courage on his own. This includes the members of the hero party. Those 300 people can be considered as the prodigies of the current generation, and they were still not able to beat him. So, tell me, does he really need to join the Dragon and Phoenix tournament to prove his worth? The disdain in Arthur's voice made Claude realize that the old man was speaking the truth. If the hero party, as well as hundreds of wanderers, couldn't even bring Zion down, then how could they possibly win against him in a one-on-one battle? After pondering for a minute, Claude decided to back down for now and consult his father at a later time about the method that they should use to approach Zion. For the time being, he shifted his attention back to the bidding and ignored the laughter of the other families, who were amused by the result of his chat with Arthur Leventis. 13 felt light taps on his cheek, which made him open his eyes. The first thing he saw was Erica looking down at him, making him blink in confusion. "Rise and shine," Erica said. "The second half of the auction is about to start." It took a while for her words to register inside his head. When he remembered that he was inside the auction house, he casually propped himself up and looked at Erica. "Thanks for the lap pillow," 13 replied. Erica smiled and showed him her palm. "Pay up. My legs are worth more than gold, you know." "How much?" 100,000 gold coins. "So cheap." The corner of Erica's lips twitched. She didn't think that this would be Zion's response. For some reason, she felt like he had called her a cheap woman, which made her want to pinch his waist to oblivion. Seeing that she might do something reckless, 13 decided to butter her up for a bit so that things wouldn't escalate in the wrong direction. "As payment for letting me rest properly, I'll buy you one item from the auction," 13 replied. Just as he expected, his words made Erica look at him in surprise. "Anything?" Erica asked in a teasing tone. "Anything," 13 replied. Erica smiled. "Good. Don't go back on your word, okay?" 13 nodded and looked at the stage, where the hostess of the auction was located. "The short break has ended, and we will now resume the second round of the auction," Dorothy said with a smile. Behind her, the curtains of the stage parted, revealing a 2-meter-tall monster that made 13 and Erica glance at each other in surprise. "This is an extremely rare mutated monster that cannot be usually seen in the wild," Dorothy stated. "And this isn't an avatar, but a real monster recently captured in the Sinai continent. According to our records, this monster is called a blaze chad skunk. However, since it is female, it is better referred to as a blaze Stacy skunk. It is a rank 5 sovereign and a very powerful monster in its own right. Unfortunately, due to its aggressive nature and dangerous ability, we had to give it some tranquilizer shots and put it to sleep. However, the abilities it possesses will now be showcased on the projection above me." As soon as Dorothy finished her speech, the abilities of the Blaze Stacy skunk appeared, allowing everyone to view it freely. Arthur and Michael, who were seated in the VIP seats, looked at the Blaze skunk with a weird look on their face. They knew for a fact that 13 had a Blaze Chad skunk as a beast companion, so seeing something like this in an auction would definitely catch his interest. What they didn't know was that 13 had already summoned Giga by his side, and let him look at the Blaze skunk inside the cage to see how he would react. "Bro, she's the one," Giga said as she pointed at the sleeping Blaze skunk in the cage. "I got you, fam," 13 replied. "Watch how I get you a mail-to-order bride." Erica, who was seated beside Zion, might not be able to understand monster language. But for some reason, she felt like she didn't need to know monster language to know what the two were talking about. Suddenly, Dorothy's voice broke her out of her daze, pulling her focus back to the hostess of the auction house. "Bidding starts at 200,000 gold coins," Dorothy declared. "The increment will be 10,000 gold minimum. Bidding starts now. 200,000. 350. 400. 13 didn't even think twice and made his bid. 5 million, 13 declared. The bidders who were only curious about the monster all looked in the direction of VIP room number 13 with shock. 5 million for a rank 5 monster. Is he insane? Maybe it's just a young master who has too much money on his hands. Is this monster perhaps something special? This is the first time I've seen and heard about a Blaze Stacy skunk. Maybe it's special. The people in the VIP rooms used their connections to know who was seated in the VIP room number 13. It didn't take long for them to get the information that they were looking for. "Your grandson sure has a unique taste," Claude said to Arthur. "It seems that the Leventis family spoiled him too much." Arthur wasn't in the mood to reply to Claude and simply remained silent. His no-good grandson was a special presence in the Leventis family. With his help, they were able to mine precious minerals, ores, and resources in the Rigel continent without the need to share them with anyone. The Earth Dragons also had a good relationship with Zion. The measly 5 million gold coins he bid for the Blaze skunk was merely pocket change for the current Leventis family, who was earning billions of gold coins due to their profitable business in the Rigel continent. Seeing that Arthur didn't want to reply, Claude decided to mess around for a bit. 6 million, Claude said with a smile. 13 and Giga glanced in the direction of the VIP room number 1 at the same time. Clearly, they didn't expect that someone would also bid for the Blaze skunk, so it caught their attention. 13 knew that someone from the Monarch clans or the prestigious family was purposely messing with him. But instead of being angry, the corner of his lips rose up into a smirk. Bro. Giga patted 13's shoulder as if worried that someone would outbid his master. Someone actually dares to steal Giga's future wife. 13 sneered. Courting death. 13 was already hellbent on letting Stacy meet Giga and was looking forward to seeing if the two of them would click with each other. He didn't care who it was that decided to mess with him. He would give his bro a wife even if it made the Leventis family go bankrupt. 10 million, 13 stated. 15 million, Claude smirked. Who is this peasant who is trying to fight me? 13 asked. 50 million. The people who were thinking that the two bidders were insane for outbidding against each other almost choked when they heard one of the two bid 50 million. Dorothy, who had been in the auction industry for a very long time, couldn't help but feel admiration for the bidder in the VIP room number 13. A rank 5 sovereign at most could be sold for 1 million gold coins, up to 3 million gold coins. However, the current bid was at 50 million, which made her believe that the one who auctioned the Blaze skunk was now jumping in joy because soon he would be very rich. Arthur was doing his best not to chuckle because Claude looked like someone who had eaten a fly. He was the second in command of the Ashford clan, one of the Monarch clans, so this was the first time that someone called him a peasant. Michael, who was also at odds with the Ashford clan, couldn't help but give his nephew a thumbs up. The more he thought about his daring nephew, the more he felt helpless because he had a penchant for attracting trouble. Only 50 million. What are you? A beggar? Claude replied in disdain. 100 million. B*TCH. Can you stop pretending to be rich when you're this poor? Even I feel ashamed for you, 13 said in a mocking tone. 200 million. A kid like you thinks that you can beat adults. Keep dreaming. 300 million. I don't know about other kids, but I doubt that a stinky adult like you can beat me. Only 300 million. Can you stop being a peasant? 500 million. The two monarchs of the Sinai continent and the Rigel continent, Douglas Griffin and Wendell Elrod, couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. Both of them had a good relationship with Zion, and they didn't expect that the teenage boy would not back down against Claude, the second in command of the Ashford clan. Even the monarch of the Aldebaran continent, Trevor Remington, could only look at Arthur and wondered if he would step in to help his grandson. However, Arthur only smirked. Clearly, he wanted to see how this drama would end. Child, do you know who I am? Claude asked. Do you think you can speak like that in front of me? I don't know who you are, but since you talk show *T, you must be show *T, 13 replied in contempt. I bid 500 million, so if you dare to fight, I'll keep you company. Let's see if you will have enough money to bid for the serpent scales later. Claude snorted. Do you really think that the Ashford family is poor? Foolish child. I'll put you in your place. 1 billion. This time, an uproar spread inside the auction house. Barely any of them knew the identity of the two bidders, and they had simply been enjoying the bickering of the two sides. However, now that someone had declared that they were from the Ashford clan, everyone knew that the battle was now about to come to an end. Although they found it ridiculous that someone would actually bid 1 billion for a rank 5 monster sovereign, the only thing they could do was watch everything from start to finish. You'll put me in place? How laughable. 13 chuckled. Zion Leventis, isn't someone a peasant like you can threaten? My friend's love life is at stake. I can't let him down. 2 billion. Fight me. Everyone drew in a sharp breath because this had already spiraled out of control. What does he mean that his friend's love life is at stake? Does his friend have some kind of monster fetish? Shush. Do you remember that guy who likes to collect those sexy sheep monsters? Maybe the Supreme Commander's friend is one of those unique individuals. Now it makes perfect sense. No, it doesn't. That's 2 billion. Love is priceless, you know? But with 2 billion, I can definitely become a sugar daddy. I know, right? While the other people inside the auction house were talking about monster fetishes, Claude, and the people inside the VIP room were all looking at Arthur with weird looks on their faces. Arthur, who was feeling amused earlier, twirled the wine in his cup, pretending that he couldn't hear or see what everyone was talking about. Claude was hesitating if he should continue bidding just to mess with Zion. However, he had a feeling that their bidding war might reach 5 billion. If Zion suddenly stopped bidding while the bid was on Claude's side of the field, things would get very ugly, very fast. Not only would he get a useless monster, but he would also not have enough funds to bid for the Serpent Scale, which was a mission that his father had assigned to him. Because of this, he no longer made a bid, making everyone sigh in disappointment. If Zion succeeded in making Claude bleed, then they would have one less competitor for the Serpent Scale that everyone was trying to get in the auction. T2 billion gold coins, Dorothy stuttered. Going once, going twice, sold. After the Blaze Stacy skunk was sold for an exorbitant price, the owner of the monster was jumping in joy all the way from the Sinai continent. He was watching the auction in real time and was already feeling very happy due to the outcome of the bidding. Ha 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 ha, I'm rich. Al Capone, who was one of 13 squad leaders, shouted. I'm filthy rich. Ha 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 ha. Boss, I'll follow you forever. Costello grabbed Al Capone's leg. Boss, take me flying. Gambino stated. Ha ha ha, we're rich. Lucky laughed out loud. Who would have thought that we'd hit it big this time? Gotti raised his fist in triumph. The members of the E4 Mafia were extremely happy due to the outcome of the bidding war. They had painstakingly caught the Blaze Stacy skunk and sent it to auction to get some money. However, none of them expected that they had struck gold. Just as everyone was laughing in happiness, Al Capone's communicator rang. Al Capone, who was in a very good mood, glanced at the name of the communicator and answered the call. Do you need something from me, sir? Al Capone asked with a smile on his face. On behalf of the Green Lanterns, I would like to thank you for the donation of 2 billion gold coins, 13 said. You have done meritorious service to our cause. Your sacrifice will not be in vain. Ha ha, so, you're joking, right? Al Capone, who was all smiles earlier, felt like crying all of a sudden. You're just joking, right? Of course, I'm joking, 13 replied. I'll leave you with 1 million since I'm a good person. So, how about 100 million? The fishies in the Sinai continent are very hungry. I'm sure that they want something big and juicy to bite on. Actually, 1 million is good. Al Capone said through tears. 1 million is good. Thank you, sir. Good. 13 replied. I'll wire you the money after the auction. Good job, soldier. Keep up the good work. An awkward silence descended inside the room as everyone looked at their boss, who looked as if he was about to cry. What Al Capone didn't know was that 13 planned to give him a different kind of reward after they met in the Sinai continent. A reward that would surpass the 2 billion gold coins that he borrowed from his subordinate, which would be spent for the greater good of the battalion under 13's command. Everyone was still reeling from the shock of seeing a rank 5 monster being auctioned for the sky-high price of 2 billion gold coins. If not for the fact that Colbert had informed 13 that the E4 Mafias had managed to capture the female Blaze skunk during one of their clearing operations in the Sinai continent, 13 would have thought twice about bidding that much money on such a monster. Knowing that the money would go to Al Capone, he decided to go all out. Why? It was because Al Capone's money was his money. Although the squad captain was currently crying bitter tears all the way from the Sinai continent, 13 would compensate him more than his money's worth. He already intended to give Al Capone a divine-grade martial technique once he and the other squad captains returned to the Aldebaran continent for their training. But since he couldn't say such a thing, he only asked Colbert to pass his message to Al Capone. He would bestow him a gold-grade martial technique, which was equivalent to what the prestigious families and monarch clans possess. When Al Capone learned about this, he no longer felt too bitter after losing his money and was even looking forward to meeting Zion after a few months. The auction proceeded rather smoothly after that short incident between 13 and Claude. Erica was also happy because 13 kept his promise and bought her something called Fiery Passion, an item that increases the effect of fire-type abilities by 50%. An hour later, The two most prized items in the auction house were finally revealed to the public. And now, the items everyone here is waiting for. The scales of the ancient eight-headed serpent. Dorothy declared, "Since these items are very special, we can only show you their projections. However, rest assured, the item is under the safekeeping of the Grand Marshal, and he will personally transfer this item to the one who wins the bidding." Everyone's expression became serious upon hearing that the two serpent scales would be auctioned separately. The majority of the bidders inside the auction house knew that they couldn't match the resources of the monarch clans as well as those of the prestigious families. However, since they were willing to gamble, some of the influential and powerful factions formed an alliance with each other so that they could pool their resources together. The allure of being able to craft a mythical or legendary equipment with a serpent scale was too much of a temptation to ignore, so everyone wanted to do their best to acquire one even if it meant offending others. As everyone already knows, these serpent scales came from a Magian king, Dorothy explained. It is an existence that is far above our comprehension. As such, any item related to them is considered priceless. Because of this, we will not put an initial bid on the item. However, every bid should increase by 10,000 gold coins. Dorothy paused for a bit as she scanned the people inside the auction house. Those who weren't seated in the VIP rooms were wearing masks to hide their identities, lowering the chances that people might recognize them and steal the items that they had won in the auction. Bidding starts now, Dorothy declared. Before anyone who wasn't in the VIP seats could even say anything, Claude raised his voice and shouted his bid. 1 billion. Claude didn't want to drag things out, so he directly raised the stakes by a large margin to deter those who didn't have any resources to spare. He thought that his only opponents would be the members of the monarch clans and the prestigious families. However, he had greatly underestimated the other families, who were eyeing the positions of the 14 great families standing at the apex of Pangea. 2 billion. 3 billion. 4 billion. Erica, who was seated beside 13, lightly tugged on the sleeves of his shirt. "You still have some scales, right?" Erica whispered. "Give me one, so I can also auction it." As someone who was born into a poor family, Erica couldn't help but feel shocked at the sheer amount that people were willing to pay for the serpent scales. If they knew that 13 had hundreds of them in his possession, people might kidnap him without fearing the authorities. "Don't be blinded by money," Erica, 13, replied. "You'll get something better in the future. For example, a mythical-grade equipment." Erica's body shuddered after hearing 13's reply. "How much money will I get if I auction a mythical-grade equipment?" Erica asked. "You're going to auction it? Why not? Are you serious?" No. Although Erica wanted to get a lot of money, she wasn't stupid. The only reason why the monarch clans were able to stand tall among the masses was because they were in possession of mythical-grade items. If she possessed such an item, wouldn't that make her extremely powerful? Unfortunately, mythical gears could only be used by thrones and monarchs. The only reason why Lady Callista was able to wield the two mythical short swords was all thanks to 13's effort in making them exclusive to his grandma. Erica believed that if she managed to survive and step into the ranks of a throne, she would wield powers that could propel her family to the top. While the two teenagers were watching the bidding war, those who were in the VIP seats were not holding back in the slightest. The first serpent scale was sold for a whopping 10 billion gold coins, and it was bought by Trevor Remington, who was a monarch of the Aldebaran continent. The second serpent scale reached 11 billion gold coins and was bought by the Stallard clan, who ruled the Ceres continent alongside the Ashford clan. Although the two sides were friendly and sometimes seen as allies, there were still rivals who wished to one-up each other. "David and his friend should be very happy right now," Erica commented. "I wish that I was thick-skinned enough to get one scale back then. Now, it's too late. Next time you get something good, I'll make sure to ask for my share." "I don't mind," 13 replied, "but that will have to wait for a while." 13 planned to train the hero party, as well as his squad captains, for the upcoming large-scale Jinn invasion. It was the perfect stage for the young heroes of the world to shine and show their mettle to the world. However, it was also the perfect stage to eliminate these heroes and make sure that they wouldn't go strong enough to threaten those who wished to cling to power. Although 13 believed that the hero party wouldn't be targeted by the powerful families and factions, he still planned to train them to increase their chances of survival. Truth be told, 13 knew that the true dangers in the Sinai continent weren't just the side of the invading monsters. The real threat was the people who could backstab them anytime. 13 was the system of cannon fodders, and he had witnessed countless betrayals in his life. No matter how strong, influential, charitable, or prestigious you were, the greatest enemies you would have to face were the people whom you thought would protect your back from the enemies that were after your life. 13 hoped with every fiber of his being that the people close to him wouldn't suffer such a tragic fate. 13 watched with amusement as the blazed Stacy skunk, whom 13 referred to as Stacy, took a stroll inside Rocky's mobile fortress. Walking right beside her was none other than Giga, who was very happy to finally gain a companion. Unfortunately, Stacy was completely ignoring him. But to the teenage boy's surprise, Giga didn't seem to mind and even looked amused at her attitude. Blazed skunks were proud monsters, and it was not very easy to tame them. They were also very deadly in many ways, especially once they unleashed their deadly spray that would make anyone want to run for their lives. When Stacy was brought inside Rocky's mobile fortress, everyone distanced themselves from the sleeping beauty and only left Giga to stay by her side. They knew that Stacy might feel threatened if she woke up in an unfamiliar place, surrounded by monsters whose ranks were higher than hers. The majority of them had already been exposed to Giga's Giga Destroyer, so they didn't want to have an encounter with the Stacy Destroyer. Everyone was paying close attention to their brother, Giga, and was looking forward to how he would make the latest addition to their circle become one of their most dependable allies. Stacy lightly prodded the Majin King's meat being roasted over the campfire. She could tell that this was some high-quality meat she had never tasted in the past. "Feel free to eat it," Giga said with a smile. "I made it just for you." Stacy pretended to not hear Giga's words and just sat by the campfire in contemplation. After waking up, the Chad skunk beside her had explained where she was and told her other things that she needed to know. She wasn't allowed to use her spray against the monster inside the mobile fortress because doing so would make their master, Zion, very angry. Stacy scoffed after hearing such a thing. Clearly, she didn't recognize her new master as her master. However, she sensed that the monsters surrounding her were stronger than her, so she decided to be civil and did not attack them unless they messed with her first. "You can eat, you know," 13 said as he walked towards Stacy, who gave him a sidelong glance. Seeing that the teenage boy's rank was the lowest in the group, she didn't treat him seriously and even looked at him in disdain. Pika and Pyko, who were perched on 13's shoulders, looked at the newcomer with great curiosity. The two baby Pokopokos had already experienced Giga's Giga Destroyer, so they had no intention of antagonizing Stacy, which was something that they usually do to people. "Can you tell me how you appeared in the Sinai continent?" 13 asked. "Usually, only jinns come out of the dimensional gates. So, seeing a monster like you appear is a surprise for everyone." Since 13 had the universal language proficiency skill, it was a very simple matter for him to communicate with anyone as long as they had a form of communication. He was expecting that Stacy wouldn't answer his question. However, to his surprise, she answered him, which made Giga give his master a thumbs up in his heart. "What's so surprising about it?" Stacy asked back. "The dimensional gate appeared in the territory where I lived. I was curious why the jinns entered it, so I decided to also enter it after all of them had left." "So the dimensional gate where you came from didn't come from Gomorrah but Solterra?" 13 inquired. Stacy didn't say anything, but she still nodded to confirm 13's statement. Anyone born in Solterra would know the name of their world because it had been ingrained into their bloodline inheritance. Most of the dimensional gates that open in Pangea came from Gomorrah. However, there were cases where it came from Solterra. 13 also knew that the members of the Order of the Apocalypse wished to enter Solterra through a dimensional gate. However, whether they had succeeded in the past or not, no one could really tell. The world of Pangea would reject any monsters above rank 9, so Majin princes and princesses were unable to step foot on 13's homeworld. However, that didn't mean that their subordinates couldn't enter, so they made use of that to attempt to gain a foothold in the world of Pangea. Camazotz even told him in secret that he also planned to invade 13's world and was only missing the coordinates that would help him open a dimensional gate. 13 was very tempted to help Camazotz appear in Pangea because, if the Death Bat managed to cross over, wouldn't that make things easier for him as well? But he wouldn't do that. 13 had his own principles, and although he got along well with Camazotz, there was no telling what his subordinates would do once they crossed over Pangea. "Can you tell me the name of the place where you came from?" 13 asked. Stacy refused to answer and simply reached out to take the roasted meat and took a bite out of it. A look of surprise appeared on her face, which made 13 and Giga smirk internally. The way to a person's heart was through their stomach. Although Stacy wasn't a person but a monster, the same rule applied to her. The teenage boy and the Chad skunk wanted to get along with Stacy, so they decided to use their trump card, which was a Majin King's meat. 13 wanted to personally roast the meat for Stacy, but everyone, including Giga, begged him to not do it. All of them had been duped by the smell of 13's cooking in the past. The food the teenage boy made smelled incredibly good, making their mouths water. However, all these foods would taste like bubblegum inside their mouths, which was a reason why the teenage boy was no longer allowed to cook for anyone. After finishing her meal, Stacy became very satisfied, so she answered more of 13's questions. But the more she answered, the stranger the teenage boy's expression became. "Tell me, have you seen the fiend, Wormwood, by chance?" 13 asked. Wormwood was one of the 7 fiends of Solterra, and he was also known as the fiend who spread plagues upon the world. He was a good friend of the sea serpent, Fornius, who was also a fiend and was the previous guardian deity of the Valbera archipelago. "You know Lord Wormwood?" Stacy asked in surprise. "I don't know him personally, but I have heard of him," 13 answered. The fiend of plagues and pestilence was a walking calamity. Although he didn't actively go out of his way to harm people, it didn't change the fact that his mere presence could make any king or emperor feel as if their kingdom or empire was about to fall into ruin. The world of Solterra had 7 celestials and 7 fiends. They were the ultimate powerhouses of the world of Solterra, and they had played a huge role in stopping the Jinn invasion, preventing them from conquering the world. The first of them was the sea monster, Fornius, whose temperament was similar to Cranky. It didn't give a hoot to anyone, and everyone who angered it had paid and would pay the price of their insolence. Fornius was once the guardian deity of the Valbera archipelago, and he was known to fight anyone, regardless of whether they were jinns, fiends, or celestials. The second fiend was Farzuf. He ruled over fornication and lust. The creatures under his command were the incubus, succubus, and satyrs, who were known for their carnal desires. For this reason, their empire had been named the Lust Empire, and only those as depraved as them dared to enter its doors. The third fiend went by the name Belial. He was the fiend of lawlessness, and was worshipped by all criminals alike. He resided at the great forest of Philena Thalis, where the first world tree had grown. He had chased away the elves and made the great forest his home. As much as the elves wanted to reclaim their homeland, it was currently impossible, for Belial was a monster whom none of them dared to face. The fourth fiend of the world, Apollyon, was the personification of death. Wherever he went, death and destruction followed. Many people also refer to him as Abaddon, and he was worshipped as the god of war. The fifth fiend was a very unique fellow, for no one, aside from the fiends and celestial, knew what he really looked like. But one thing was clear. Dantanian was once a human, and had simply managed to obtain the power of a fiend. He was a man of many faces and traveled the world in a carefree manner. Many say that if you ever come across Dantanian and recognize him for who he was, he would become a lifelong friend and will treasure you until you breathed your last. Mammon was known as the fiend of greed and money. Among the fiends of the world, he was the most well-known, for he interacted with humans, demi-humans, and any creature who wished to do business with him. 13 had met Mammon in the Valbera archipelago and had seen how powerful he was. With a wave of his hand, everyone and anything turned to gold, so not many dared to offend such a beast. The last, but not the least, was Wormwood. Among the fiends, Fornius treated him as a friend. Wormwood was considered an outcast because he carried plagues, pestilence, and diseases with him. But those who were brave enough to seek him for cures for incurable diseases attested that he was one of the most misunderstood fiends in the world. Mikhail, Shusha, Remy, and Rhea sat, listening to 13, who lightly tapped the whiteboard in front of him as he explained the fiends of Solterra. Aside from Fazuf, Belial, and Mammon, the location of the 4 other fiends are unknown, 13 said. If you ever come across rumors of their whereabouts, make sure to remember them. The one I'm most curious about is Wormwood. However, do not approach him at any cost. You might die by accident because his powers are very potent. Just by standing at a location, he had been able to stop the Jinn invasion. They died from his pestilence. Wada! Rhea raised her hand. I'll find him. Good. 13 lightly patted Rhea's head, making the latter close her eyes happily. If I hear anything, I'll make sure to let you know, Mikhail said. But Solterra is vast. Even if I were accidentally sent to Wormwood's location, you might not be able to go to that place, Zion. Don't worry, I have my ways, 13 replied. With Metatron's help, 13 could teleport to any place in Solterra as long as it wasn't near any human kingdoms. Since Wormwood didn't like to visit human kingdoms, not wanting to hurt people, 13 was confident that he could meet with this misunderstood fiend in the future. Of course, he could ask Laplace Demon, the One, and Metatron about its whereabouts, but he was certain that none of them would answer his questions. There was a limit to how much help they could give to wanderers, and unless the teenage boy located Wormwood on his own, Metatron wouldn't open a portal for his sake. After their short history lesson, 13 began to train his siblings, making sure that all of them were on the right path. Rhea, who was still mastering the Nutcracker kick, was being assisted by Uncle Boo and Albion, who were always by her side. In 5 years, Remy would also undertake her first wandering, so 13 was paying close attention to her training. After clearing his previous mission, 13 had negotiated that his sisters, Remy and Rhea, would be allowed to absorb rank 5 beast cores even before they entered Solterra. In short, 13 was helping them cheat, but it was the kind that got the reluctant approval of the God of Wanderers. Both of them had already absorbed the rank 5 sovereign cores in their bodies and had begun to assimilate it. Before they even stepped into the world of Solterra, both Remy and Rhea would have the strength of a rookie, surpassing their peers of the same generation. With 13 working for the God of Wanderers, he believed that the One would not send Remy to a very dangerous place unless he was there with her as well. The days passed swiftly, and a month later, 13 was surprised to find 4 people visiting their residence. They were none other than Shanu, Erica, Rihanna, and Derek. There's still a month before your training starts. Why are the 4 of you here? 13 asked. Are you all that eager to start your training? We just came to visit, Erica replied. Do you think we're masochists or something? Actually, I came here to train early, Master. Derek patted her chest. By the way, where's Miss Shusha? The corner of 13's lips twitched because he now understood why Derek wanted to train early. He was one of Shasha's many admirers, and since 13's beautiful sister was currently in Pangea, Derek wanted to have the chance to train with her. I see. So you chose death. 13 smiled faintly. Derek's body shuddered uncontrollably because for a brief moment, he thought that he was looking at the Grim Reaper instead of his master. 13 eyed the swordsman of the hero party with a smile, while formulating a training regimen that would make Derek cough out blood. He would make sure that he wouldn't even have the time to think of Shusha, who was also busy with her own training. I want to train too, Rihanna commented. The mission I had last time was like a walk in the park thanks to the training I got. If I can get stronger, I wouldn't mind a bit of suffering. I want to train as well, Shana replied. I realized during our last mission that I have a lot to learn. Since I only trained for a month last time, there wasn't enough time for me to fully understand my new abilities. This time, I want to stabilize my foundation so I can be of help in the Sinai continent. Erica, who had no intention of training at the moment, suddenly found herself at the crossroads. She had always been a very competitive person by nature, so she didn't want Derek, Shano, and Rihanna to surpass her anytime soon. during their previous mission. She also felt like her fighting prowess had drastically increased after the 1-month hellish training with Zion. But a month of training wasn't enough to fully master the things that she needed to know. The trial of courage taught her many things, and although they no longer had problems in dealing with rank 5 sovereigns, fighting against rank 6 monsters was still tough for them. If not for the fact that 13 had given the bosses of each floor the perfect level of injuries, they might have suffered some casualties due to how strong these bosses were. But there was one thing bothering Erica, and that was the monsters of the 12th floor. According to their guides, the boss of the 12th floor was a rank 8 sovereign who could raise its strength to that of a rank 9. There was also an Umbra Fang, a rank 7 sovereign, which was also very difficult to deal with. The weakest monsters on the 12th floor were rank 4 monsters. However, none of these monsters attacked them, and they even helped the Wanderers reach the portal that led to the 13th floor. There were no traces of the Umbra Fang and the Grievefoot. However, they noticed that a tenth of the forest was destroyed. They were not aware that it was due to the fact that Cranky kicked the Umbra Fang because it tried to jump on 13's bandwagon after refusing the alliance that the teenage boy offered. Should I train or not? Erica thought. 13 glanced at Erica with a smile, which gave the young lady goosebumps. Suddenly, she felt someone hug her leg, which made Erica look down. There, she saw Rhea, looking at her with a big smile on her face. Sis, train together, Rhea said, making Erica's heart melt. Okay, let's train together, Erica replied before picking Rhea up and kissing her chubby cheeks. Rhea giggled and kissed Erica back, making Rihanna and Shauna feel a little envious. Good. Since all of you wanted to train, we can start your training in 2 days, 13 replied. You can go back home tomorrow, Erica, and pack some clothes for the training. Since the others planned to train from the start, I'm sure that they already made their preparations. Shanu, Rihanna, and Derek nodded because they had already made preparations for their training. When Dinah and Mildred found out through their group chat that Shauna, Erica, Rihanna, and Derek were already in the Leventis residence to start their training, the two also started packing because they didn't want to be left behind by their comrades. Roland and Joshua, on the other hand, were busy helping with the recruitment of the central government, so they couldn't join right away. However, both of them promised that they would be there a month later so that they could also participate in 13's training. That night, Alessia, with the help of Shanu, Erica, and Rihanna, cooked a feast for everyone. While the Leventis family and Zion's friends were having a good time, something incredible was happening in the secluded base of the Order of Raziel. A heavenly phenomenon of a giant serpent emerged from the heavens, making the members of the Order of Raziel feel as if their hearts had been grasped into a fame grip. Gerald, whose entire body was covered by sweat, raised his adamantine hammer and struck it heavily down the anvil. With each strike, the giant serpent in the heavens grew larger until it blocked the light of the sun, leaving behind a dark shadow on the land. The only thing that could be seen was the flames of Sylvana and the sparks that were created with each hammer strike. Gerald knew that he was in the critical juncture of his smithing, and one mistake could lead everything to ruin. However, he didn't back down and continued to hit the armor, shaping it to his will. The body of the giant black serpent suddenly changed its color to crimson, and soon, an ear-piercing screech reverberated in the heavens. The members of the Order of Raziel covered their ears and tried to withstand the pressure that was forcing them to kneel on the ground. But despite their effort, they knelt one by one, facing the forge where Gerald was fighting a battle of his own. With each hammer strike, he could feel his hammer getting heavier and heavier. It was as if the laws of the world were trying to prevent him from swinging his hammer and completing the armor that he was making. Gerald roared as he forcefully swung the hammer with all of his might. He would not allow himself to be held back by anything. The memories when he created the adamantine-grade equipment that 13 transformed into mythical gears flashed in front of him. Back then, he was just mastering his craft and was still considered a beginner by his son. However, after many years of hard work, swinging his hammer as if he was carrying the entire world on his shoulders, Gerald finally mastered the hammer of all seasons. Anyone who prevented him from doing what he wanted to do would get smashed by his hammer. Suddenly, the tolling of a bell resounded across the land, drowning the screech of the giant serpent. Gerald raised his hammer and struck with great momentum. With each strike, the bell tolled as if informing the world that something was about to be born. Finally, at the 13th toll of the bell, the giant serpent was pulled from the sky as if it was being sucked by the armor that Gerald had finished crafting. The black serpent tried to resist and fight, but it was of no use. Gerald felt all the strength in his body disappear, and he collapsed helplessly on the floor. However, a smile could be seen on his weary and exhausted face. Lying on top of the forge was a red armor, glowing in a faint light. This was the result of Gerald's blood, sweat, and tears. He wanted to laugh out loud, but even laughing required too much effort on his part. "I did it, Zion," Gerald said with a smile. "I really did it." The members of the Order of Raziel looked at the blacksmith that had collapsed on the ground, and the armor that was shining in the forge. For the first time in history, a blacksmith had successfully created the first mythical armor that would take the world by storm. The Order of Raziel descended into chaos as soon as the mythical armor was completed. Adira immediately rushed to check Gerald's condition, and after confirming that he was only feeling lethargic out of exhaustion, she was finally able to sigh in relief. Her gaze then landed on the red armor resting on the forge, and for a brief moment, the thought of stealing it crossed her mind. However, the thought instantly vanished just as soon as Zion's face popped up in her mind. That teenage boy had formed an alliance with their order, and Adira had a very good impression of him. Because of this, she wasn't overcome by her temptations, allowing her to think clearly. However, although she no longer desired to take the armor for herself, the other members of the order might have different thoughts. The heavenly phenomenon had alerted all the higher-ups, and all of them had already gathered in the scene, eyeing the red armor with greed. "I know what all of you are thinking, but please, hold yourselves back," the leader of the Shadow Union branch, Lady Uriel, said in a serious tone. "Don't be tempted by short-term gains. Would you rather steal this armor and break all ties with its maker, one of the very few capable of crafting mythical equipment? Or would you rather hold back your temptation and retain the close relationship he has with the Order of Raziel? Do not let your greed blind you from the bigger picture." Some of the other branch leaders frowned after hearing her words. Lady Uriel was a seer and held a high position within their order. Her words weighed just as much as gold, and many in the order seek her counsel when doing important tasks. "We can just detain him here, you know," a man with a scar on his face sneered. "After some torture, I'm sure he will be more than happy to work for us." A few leaders nodded in approval. However, Lady Uriel, as well as the branch leaders who accompanied 13 in the Battle of the Arcadia Archipelago, decided that working with Gerald was a better choice. Adira, who had heard her master's words, stood in front of Gerald so that she could protect him just in case other people decided to play deity. Zion had trusted her with his father, so she would do her best to not break his trust. A standoff between the various leaders took place, raising the tension in the surroundings. Suddenly, a purple portal appeared beside the forge, taking everyone by surprise. Adira, who was prepared to attack anyone who crossed the portal, suddenly found herself staring at a familiar teenage boy, whom she hadn't seen for a while. Just as she was about to call out his name, the drow's body suddenly stiffened when she saw a deathbat monster emerge right behind the boy. The members of the Order of Raziel were also frozen in place after seeing this scene. None of them dared to make a sound or even move, fearing the creature in front of them, a Magian prince, a being whom none of them dared to antagonize. "Ha ha ha! My armor!" Camazotz shouted in happiness as he stared at the red armor that was oozing with a powerful aura. "I knew you wouldn't let me down. 13. Ha ha ha! It's only a mythical grade armor, and you're already this happy." 13 asked in disdain. "If you don't want a legendary grade armor, then you can take it as it is." Adira, Lady Uriel, and the rest of the Order of Raziel almost choked on their saliva after hearing the teenage boy's disdainful words. Although he didn't say it outright, but for a brief moment, they felt like he was saying that mythical grade armor was trash. If anyone heard this, all of them would spit on the teenage boy in anger. From their point of view, a mythical grade armor was already something extremely precious. No one would even dare to sell such an item because it was a priceless treasure. Camazotz, who heard 13's disdainful words, coughed lightly. 13, my best friend. Of course, I'm not satisfied with this armor, Camazotz replied. HMPH, why would I settle for a mythical armor when you can make it a legendary one? Do you think I'm stupid or the people here are stupid? 13 nodded. Have you brought the beast course? I got them right here. Camazotz replied. Fortunately, I have 1 rank 9 beast core and 2 rank 8 beast core. Will that be enough? It will suffice, 13 replied before glancing at his father, who was lying on the ground. Pops, why are you like this? You only crafted 1 mythical armor and you already look as if you are about to kick the bucket. Even if you don't feel ashamed, I feel ashamed just looking at you. You damn brat. Gerald shouted in anger. Come here, so I can break your leg. Earlier, he was very happy because he managed to finally craft a mythical armor. However, his happiness disappeared when Zion arrived. Instead of his son praising him for a job well done, Zion even dared to look down on him. If only he could only move and stand up, he would have already kicked 13's bum to oblivion. Pops, don't be like that. You're making me look bad, 13 replied as he motioned for Camazotz to pick up the armor on the forge. I'll be taking this armor for now. Make sure to rest for a bit and craft another one, okay? Your dream of becoming the patriarch of the main branch of the Leventis family is almost at hand. So, work hard, Pops. After saying whatever he wanted to say, 13 entered the purple portal. Everyone, please take care of 13's father, Camazotz said in a teasing tone. I'm be good friends with 13, so his enemies are my enemies. Make sure to remember that. Okay. The death bat then entered the purple portal with a big smile on his face. A few seconds later, the purple portal disappeared, leaving everyone covered in cold sweat. Suddenly, those who spoke about capturing and enslaving Gerald approached the 13's father with smiles on their faces. So, Gerald, are you hurt? A middle-aged man asked. I'm the branch leader of the Wolf Brigade. This is a high-quality rejuvenation potion. Not only will it heal injuries and restore your stamina, it will also help you recover your mental strength. Here, please take it. Sir Gerald, I am the branch leader of the Skyhawks, an old man said with a big smile on his face. This is a 1,000-year-old ginger. Anyone who eats this, even if they are old as me, will still be able to move their hips and plow the fields for 3 days and 3 nights, without rest. So, Gerald, I am the... Adira looked at these people in disdain, but she didn't stop them from trying to curry favor from Zion's father. As long as Gerald and the Order of Raziel formed a good relationship with each other, then they could expect good things from this alliance. Lady Uriel also sighed in relief. If 13 hadn't arrived with the Magian Prince, things would have ended very differently. But now that they knew the consequences of antagonizing the teenage boy and his family, none of the branch leaders would dare to make things difficult for them. Turning a Magian Prince into an enemy was a very stupid thing to do, and they couldn't afford to have internal strife at this point in time. Gerald, who was receiving the praises from the branch leaders of the Order of Raziel, finally regained his good mood and had completely forgotten his no-good son, who rained down on his parade. While Gerald was being carried to the infirmary, 13 and Camazotz appeared at the Arcadia archipelago, where the battle against the Artemians took place. He needed a place that was away from the human territories to do what he needed to do. Guard me, okay. 13 replied. Camazotz nodded. He didn't know how 13 would transform a mythical-grade armor into a legendary armor. But one thing was certain. There was a chance that it would attract unwanted company. So Camazotz needed to brace himself to defend the teenage boy, who was starting to scribble runes on the ground. 13 continued to write down runes for nearly half an hour before placing the 3 beast cores around the red armor. He then sat cross-legged on the ground to raise his mental power to its peak. This lasted for another half an hour, but Camazotz didn't voice out any complaint. The Death Bat had known the teenage boy for many years and already understood that he was someone who was true to their word. 13 had never broken a promise to him, which was why Camazotz had accompanied him to fight against the Magian King despite the fact that he was someone who only bullied the weak and feared the strong. And during that battle, the death bat realized something that made him feel ashamed. Cranky, the honey badger, didn't back down in the face of an enemy that was much stronger than him. Camazotz thought of the honey badger as a fool, but when he saw how courageous it was, he felt very ashamed of himself. Cranky was even weaker than Camazotz, and yet he protected Zion with everything he had. This planted a seed of courage inside the death bat's heart, making him want to stop being a coward. As to whether this seed of courage would bloom, that would only depend on Camazotz's resolve, which would be tested a few years in the future.